Every once in a while, I'll pick up and play a game that for whatever reason is just not clicking with me. Maybe it's the difficulty learning curve, the complexity of the game's many systems, or maybe that game in a particular genre just isn't speaking to me at that particular time. And as I get older, I feel like my patience for games that really aren't speaking to me gets less and less, and I've also just become much more protective of my time. When I pick up and play a game, I want to make sure it's something that I enjoy and I actually want to play to completion. But hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 games that I dropped. And I have to thank 2 people in particular who kind of inspired this topic for me. One being Femtrooper and another being ReturnToMotherBase. I will post links to both of their videos down below. I really enjoyed watching both of their videos and then kind of like looking back at my shelf and thinking about all the games I've ever played and what are 5 that I also dropped and didn't really ever have a desire to go back to. But I do want to put a little spin on this video. I have the physical copies for all 5 of these games that I dropped, and I want to talk about, will I ever go back to these games? And if so, why? If not, why not? So before I get started, I want to thank all of you for tuning into this video, and I also want to hear from you down in the comment section below. Has there ever been a game or series of games that for whatever reason you dropped? Leave me a comment below and let me know, and tell me why you dropped that particular game. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Now, this first game is the best example of a game that I dropped, probably, of these 5. And spoiler alert, unfortunately, this is a game I don't think I will ever be going back to because I've given it 3 honest tries. That is FromSoftware's Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I'd like to meet the person that played this game to completion and only died twice. I don't know how it would be humanly possible. This was kind of paving a new way, I think, for Miyazaki and kind of an experiment where it wasn't like Dark Souls, it certainly wasn't like Bloodborne or Elden Ring. It was kind of unique in its own right, and I still think stands among the rest of the Soulsborne type games as being just this really unique experience where you cannot become OP. You cannot just grind a bunch of levels and tackle bosses that you earlier in the game couldn't. You have to learn and master the parry system in this game. And I just could not, for the life of me, understand or get into the rhythm of that parry system. Earlier in the game, kind of the first difficulty hurdle that you have to clear is this giant ogre. And this ogre is kind of guarding this building of sorts that you can't climb over. You have to defeat this guy. And the first time I played it on PlayStation 4, I couldn't. I tried it 100 times, I just gave up, walked away from the game, and it wasn't until a year or so later that I went back to PlayStation, tried again, still couldn't do it. And so actually earlier this year, I picked up Sekiro again on Xbox, and I gave it another try. And I got past the ogre, and I felt so accomplished. I felt like I had basically beaten the game's final boss. And then as soon as I got over that building and beat the ogre, I feel like I was just hitting wave after wave of new mini-boss. And it just never really captured the magic for me of the Dark Souls games, because once you clear a certain boss, the game kind of allows you to breathe a little bit. Maybe the next 2 or 3 bosses aren't as difficult, but I feel like this game just continues to punish you and beat you down and spit in your face even when you are on the ground. Boss after boss, mini-boss after mini-boss, and even just the regular enemies in this game were just ridiculous. And I eventually called it quits when I got to, I think, the Raging Bull. And everyone's like, Rusty, the Raging Bull is not that hard. It's really pretty simple comparatively to the rest of the bosses. Maybe that's the case. But for me, this game just is too punishing. And it's one of those games that I go back to where I think, was I ever actually having fun with it? And the answer is no. Learning the parry system wasn't fun, and even exploring the world to a certain extent, you just have so much anxiety, or at least I did, when I was wandering this world, because I knew that around the corner I was going to get wrecked. And in the Dark Souls, Demon Souls type games, oftentimes that is a draw for me, but for Sekiro, it just didn't really capture the magic that I was hoping, and unfortunately this is a game that I'm shelving forever, and we'll probably get rid of this copy too. So if my brother-in-law wants this, you can have it, buddy, because I am done with Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Now, this next game is in a series of games that I've loved for nearly 20 years. And we've been so critical of the game developer of this series because we want them to move the needle forward. They've just been kind of making these half-step iterations on this series for years. But this one, they actually did make some significant changes, and unfortunately, it just did not hit with me. And that is Pokémon Sun on the 3DS. I loved X and Y, and of course the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, but this one just did not hit the right notes for me. I think the challenges or the trials, they kind of went away from the traditional gym system, and I just did not like that at all. I was fine with the Alolan Pokemon, and the new region itself was fine, especially their take on some of the older Pokemon. They had, I guess they looked a little bit different because they were in obviously a completely different region, but whatever it was, this game, it felt like a chore to play. However, I played it whatever it was, like 10, 12 years ago, and when I was doing a 3DS collection video a year or so ago, I was reviewing my old comments for games that I had documented in a system called Backloggery. If you're familiar with that, it's where you can chronicle your game collection. And I had some pretty harsh things to say, as I recall.
But I still played it for nearly 30 hours. Let's see what I had to say. Oh my word. All right, I wrote a book for this one. Incineroar, Alakazam, Arcanine, Pangoro, Toucanon, Gyarados. Honestly, I'm not too fond of the new trial challenge setup as opposed to traditional gyms. Maybe it's the nostalgia and fanboy in me talking, but it's kind of lame in my opinion. Also, the whole call an ally mechanic when encouraging wild Pokemon is infuriating. I don't even remember what that is. Get that out of here. And why the heck am I collecting these weirdo green Zygarde things anyways? Oh well, graphics looks great, and I like the new Pokemon.
Unlike Sekiro though, I do feel like this is one I would like to go back and give another try. It's one of the very few Pokemon games that I've not rolled credits on. I think Black and White 2, Sun and Moon, and more recently Violet and Scarlet are the only ones, I think in the entirety of the mainline series, that I've not rolled credits on. So I'd like to maybe give this one another try. Again, if I'm not enjoying it, I will walk away. But what are your thoughts on Pokemon Sun and Moon? Did you like it, or did it rub you the wrong way like it did for me back when it originally released? We're going to give this one another try. It's just a matter of when. All right, this next game is a remaster of a PlayStation 3 game originally. And I remember the pre-order fiasco of the collector's edition back in the day. It was wild. If you know, you know. But this is Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. This is the, again, remastered version on the PlayStation 4. What a match made in heaven. I remember all of the hype leading up to this game's release. I remember getting a special edition Game Informer magazine with Oliver on the front cover and a deep dive on the game at the time. Studio Ghibli collaborating with Level 5, one of the greatest JRPG developers at the time, with Dark Cloud 1 and 2, Dragon Quest 8, and Rogue Galaxy. I thought nothing could go wrong with this game. And unfortunately, I think it's less about the game and more of a me problem, because the soundtrack in this game is absolutely outstanding. Of course, the character models and the graphical style is basically like a Studio Ghibli movie come to video game life. And it was a decent story as well that kind of draws you in and tugs at your heartstrings early on, my goodness. But the battle system just didn't work for me. And maybe I made a mistake. I played the second game first, Revenant Kingdom, which if you watch my top 25 PlayStation 4 games video, you'll know that that is one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 4. I think I just preferred that action RPG battle system to the turn-based RPG here in Wrath of the White Witch. And it's not even that I don't like turn-based games, it's just that when you collected these familiars and you were actually in combat, to me it just felt very slow and disengaging and not quick and snappy like I was hoping it would. And then even when you evolve your familiars, if I remember right, they go back to level 0 or level 1, and you kind of reset their stats in a way. And so it didn't feel like in Pokemon when you have Charmander evolving into Charmeleon, it's like, wow, okay, his attack stats are increasing, he's like this new and evolved monster that I can use in combat, and it felt rewarding and satisfying. I felt like you didn't get that when your familiars evolved in Ni no Kuni. So again, this is absolutely something I want to go back to, because I was 25 hours in this game. it's not like I played it for 2 or 3 hours and didn't give it an honest try. I was pretty deep in the game. I was really enjoying exploring the world, doing side quests for characters. Again, the surrounding cast of characters is fantastic. Little Drippy with his little British accent was just a great companion to the main protagonist, Oliver. I enjoyed like 90% of what this game had to offer, but that battle system just really was not something I was enjoying deeper into the game. So something I want to go back to eventually. I'll probably have to just restart my save file because I was so deep in the game at that point, I'd have to relearn everything. So probably going to restart this one, but what are your thoughts on Ni no Kuni 1 and the second game if you've played it? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, but this is absolutely a game that I dropped, but will be returning to eventually. Next up is a game that I've gone back to multiple times as well, and I just cannot get myself to finish it, and that is Days Gone. Developed by Sony Bend, the people who made the Siphon Filter games and more recently Uncharted Golden Abyss. And honestly, this game seems like a game that's really up my alley. Giant open world, zombie apocalypse. It's kind of like The Last of Us meets Sons of Anarchy, if you've ever seen that show. You play as this main guy named Deacon, and they kind of, in the very beginning of the game, kind of show the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. You're separated from your wife, and so the remainder of the game is you trying to find your wife if she lived and survived the beginning of this zombie apocalypse breaking out. But I think what kept a lot of people, including myself, from finishing this game is that it's 60 hours long. Like, you want to play stuff like Skyrim and The Witcher 3 for 60 hours because it's kind of this medieval fantasy open world. You love exploring it and kind of getting into all the different side quests, but Days Gone is just not conducive to 50 plus hours of game playing. I enjoyed a lot of what I was playing. I liked exploring the open world, and I think the big hook of this at the time was rendering all of these hordes of zombies chasing you around the world, and this main guy has like a Harley Davidson motorcycle that you can ride around the world, and you go to these different encampments and meet different people along the way, and it's decent enough, but 60 hours, I just don't know if I can get myself to complete it. If I ever do go back to it, it's going to be very much like binging something on Netflix or have a podcast or a Twitch stream up while I'm playing it and really just kind of zoning out of the main story. And it also has things that I really don't like in games where your motorcycle, you have to constantly be filling it up with fuel. And when you're going from one end of the map to the next, again, it's a zombie apocalypse, so resources are scarce and it's difficult to come by fuel for your motorcycle. So you always have to have that in the back of your mind, like, how much fuel is it going to take to get from here to there? And am I going to be able to find any resources in between to make sure that I'm not out in the middle of nowhere and then just have to wander on feet to get to my next destination? So I'd like to go back to it because I recently binged all 11 seasons of The Walking Dead leading up to the Rick and Michonne 6-episode special, which was great, by the way. But I don't know. I have like 50 more hours of Days Gone to roll credits, and that's too much Days Gone for anyone, in my opinion. But maybe, eventually, I'll go back to this one. If you've played it, let me know down below. Have you ever rolled credits? If not, what's keeping you from playing Days Gone? Last but certainly not least, this will probably surprise some people that don't know me and probably infuriate people that do know me. We have The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. This is a game I dropped, not because it's not something I enjoyed. I'm not a Breath of the Wild hater. It just is one of those games that intimidates the heck out of me. It's a Persona 5, it's a Witcher 3, a game that is almost just too big for its own good, and it's one of the games that's been sitting in your backlog for far too long, and you just keep finding every excuse not to pick it back up. I really love everything that's really here as part of that core Zelda experience. I love how they've reinvented themselves with both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom with these giant open worlds. But that's what scares me most. It's like, with games like this, I like to be able to say after playing for a couple of hours that I've accomplished something. I've moved the needle even just a little bit towards the end of the game. And I feel like I could play this game for 5 to 10 hours and not really accomplish much more than getting a new weapon or a new armor set. And maybe that's what I need to do. I just need to reframe my thinking in what does success look like with every time I pick up Breath of the Wild. Maybe it's just completing one shrine and getting a new armor set, or getting to the next area in getting a new heart piece or something like that. But help me get back in Breath of the Wild, and maybe even more so, because I've played this for about 10 hours and I've played Tears of the Kingdom for about 5 hours. Should I go back to Breath of the Wild, or should I just jump right into Tears of the Kingdom and that be my next-gen Zelda experience? Let me know down below. This is another one that I'm not dropping forever. I really and truly do want to go back to it and experience why this is so beloved by so many people, why so many people have quickly said that it's become their favorite game of all time. I know there's something incredibly special here, and I do want to give it the time it deserves. I just need to be in the right frame of mind and the right kind of place in my life, I guess, to be in the mood for an open world Zelda game. But absolutely, we'll be going back to this eventually, not dropping it forever. All right, everyone, that rounds out my list of 5 games that I dropped and whether or not I'd go back to them. And surprisingly enough, the only game that I said I was never going to go back to, I'm sorry, FromSoft, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. So I would love to hear from you in the comment section below, or consider this an open tag if you create YouTube videos regularly. I'd love to hear from you, and drop me a comment and let me know if you do make a video on this topic, games you dropped, and whether or not you'd ever go back to them. I'd love to hear from you and check out your video. But I want to thank you all so much for watching. Here in the near term, I will be sharing a video where I'm just talking about the games I've been recently playing. Maybe back here you can see a game that I will be talking about in that next video, but I have a lot of stuff in the pipeline that I'm looking forward to sharing. But for now, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.